The Commanders get Carson Wentz. The Colts get a third-round pick in this year's draft and a third-round pick in next year's draft that could convert to a second based on last year's incentives. Now, last year's incentives involved 70% of the snaps. Remember, when the Eagles traded Wentz to the Colts, it was for a third and a second that would become a first if Wentz played 70% of his snaps. So that means that this trade is for 2/3, and one of the thirds can become a second if Wentz plays.
So they just rolled over the deal, but just changed the first.
Isn't that how? Isn't that's how you read this, right?
That convert to a second based on last year's incentives, which I don't think I've ever seen that before. Have you?
I have not either. But that's isn't that how you read it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else you could read it, right?
Pretty stunning. The trade was stunning. Wentz getting traded was stunning. Wentz getting traded for
they were going to.
It was to me. Yeah, I thought he'd get cut. I didn't think someone was going to acquire Carson Wentz. Did you?
I mean, 27-7. There just aren't that many quarterbacks. I mean, we'll dive into Jimmy. He's just a more physically gifted player than Jimmy. Honestly, the thing about Carson Wentz, he has been pretty durable the last several years. And do you know what the Commanders would do to be 9-7 headed into Week 18 with a chance to get in the playoffs? I mean, they would. Ron Rivera would sign up for that immediately, right?
Yeah.
He'd be like, "Can we also play the Jags?" Like, the Carson Wentz was not as bad as the people talk about him. They traded him, guy, and I was actually on the phone with a buddy before we hopped on, and I was asking him, like, the buzz around the combine on him, and, you know, this guy may or may not be in a building that Carson used to be in. It's not as – obviously the play is not perfect, but everyone acknowledges that. If his play was like his play, but it was like, you know what? We talked about him like Jimmy. Carson's a fucking dude, man. People love him. Quentin Nelson on the boys. Every Wednesday they'd come over for beers and wings and film at his house. He had a film room. It's the opposite. People think he's weird. He does not interact well with people. I think a huge reason they got rid of him was the person, not the player. And I think the trade still shows you, like I think there's something there with the player. And I wonder if, like, the Steelers, like, I bet the Steelers would have taken him. Maybe not for that price, but, like, they were probably like, yeah, we'll just give you a third for him. 27-7 and a guy that can just keep you afloat. There's something to be said for that, isn't there? Again,
yes.
Throws you
yes. There are, half of the league is true starting worthy quarterbacks, and the other half is not.
Well, and his contract starting next year is really it becomes Jimmy. It's year to year, so this doesn't mean it. So you're basically just renting him for a year, a third, or trying him out.
But I do think there's a difference, right, between the Eagles, a team who had won a championship, had some equity, were in a position of resetting by trading him, and a Colts team who was kind of on the verge, we thought, of just being a solid quarterback away. Carson going to a guy who knew him when he was younger, liked him. They went and got him. Stable organization, stable situation, and they couldn't have got him out of there. I mean, they could have got him out of there a little faster, but they got him out of there pretty fast.
I'm not saying it's not stunning that
after investing in him.
The Colts situation in a vacuum, how that played out, yeah, stunning. If you would have said last year, everyone was betting, like, this thing's going to work. They'll be a double-digit win team. They're going to be in the playoffs. They'll probably win the division. And then but to me, once we had the information and once everything started leaking the last month, it was clear, like, they were over him. Whether it was the owner, whether it was the general manager, it might just be as simple as, like, our locker room doesn't love him, so we can't stand behind him. That to me is when I say it's not stunning or shocking, just because we've had the buildup, right? Like, to me, Russell Wilson, even though we've had a buildup for a year, that was honestly, guy, that's one of the all-time holy shit. I double-checked Adam Schefter. Did you? Click on
I
this,
did.
like,
yes.
Carson was just because, like, the Commanders, the teams, his story now, back-to-back years getting traded, first guy since Sam Bradford. And part of it, guys, the fall from grace. I mean, he's I would say of athletes, all-time fall from grace. Given his position, given he got a huge contract, given his just physical attributes. He might have been propped up a little bit by the market that he played in Philly, but we had watched him enough on Sunday and Monday night games to realize, like, God, I fucking like this guy. People with the Eagles loved him, guy. Like
I
the
really
team
like
and the coaches.
My only issue with all-time fall from grace is I don't think he was at the top that long.
When I say all time, I just mean the distance. Just
No,
where he
but I'm
was
just
and where he went.
But think about it. Like you're right. They're 11-2. He's an MVP candidate. He gets hurt. They win the championship without him, and he never wins 10 games again.
Yeah.
And one thing I do wonder, everything you described about the guy, plus they lost to the Jags on the last day of the season. Ugh.
Yeah.
If he throws 4 touchdowns and they blow the doors off the Jags and go to the playoffs, maybe it's different. But if we're gonna put up with you, you got to win. You can't be a loser and a pain in the ass. And by their I know they went 9, and I'm not saying I don't think he's a loser, but they lost a must-win game against a bad team. So if we can't trust you, then what are we doing here?
Well, when I tweeted out giving myself credit, obviously it was tongue in cheek, but part of it was like, at any moment, what if I told you, you're like, bro, Jimmy Garoppolo, Deshaun Watson, the Pittsburgh's 3-way trade, and I'm just like fucking out somewhere on hole 4. Like, what an idiot! Like,
we just get you in.
You don't recover from that. Not when you know it's coming. Like, there was just a standard that should be set when you know it's coming. Like, you're playing to get into the playoffs. To me, if they had played the Titans, let's say, or the Steelers or the Chiefs, it wouldn't have been as crazy. It was the Jags. And remember, the build-up to that week is like, it's kind of weird. They haven't won there since 14, but it's like, no, not this team. Like, no way. And then, I'm at the Rams game looking up at the circular thing. It's like, it's 23-6. What is going on? They got their ass kicked. There are certain things in life you don't recover from. I would not be able to look at myself in the mirror if Jimmy got traded and I was fucking around when it's clear Jimmy might get traded. You don't recover from losing, which it was a playoff game. Right? Like Herbert, you can recover from losing that game. It wasn't his fault. Like his coach was being an idiot, right? Like the Chargers can recover from that. I think the Colts might just be like, we had a stink on us from that game that we needed to kind of get off of us. And it really starts with him.
Yeah.
I honestly never, was he that terrible? I know he threw the one pick.
No, it was. I think it was more that just the whole thing. It's the Jags. Like you could lose that game to 25 other teams. Maybe there's nobody quite as bad as losing.
Well, let's say they had a normal quarterback, like they had drafted Carson Wentz, the owner loved him, and he just had an off game. Wouldn't you say the coach might get fired in a situation like that? Like you just lay an egg, and the coach had kind of been on, like hadn't proven that much. Like, wouldn't the coach typically get blamed? Feels like he got blamed instead of the coach in that situation, right?
Well, yes and no. I would say it feels like they were looking for a reason, and they got plenty of reasons. Again, if they win that game,
it wasn't Frank's greatest day at the office.
No, it wasn't. Clear. But I don't think Carson got blamed for that loss. I think that loss is part of why he's gone. I think winning that game could have saved him, but I think their attitude. It's not that we lost that game. It's that we lost that game. Part of it's we were in position. That game mattered. Part of it is like, did he miss a start or did he get back in time because they changed the rule for him? Right. Part of it was I think they spent some of their season trying to find other quarterbacks in case they needed other quarterbacks in case Carson tested positive and couldn't play in a game.
Well, see, that's what I get back to the equity he had. Darius Leonard, their star middle linebacker, did not get the vaccine and missed games. And they don't care at all. They love the guy. He's their team captain. So I think it has more to do like they were just off on
100%.
100%.
They were wrong fast.
My theory is pretty simple on him. That when Frank was around him, and any human that's new to a job, whether you're an NFL player, whether you're a fucking podcast host, or whether you're a sales guy, early on in your tenure at a job, you're not taking your feet up, your shoes off, and putting your feet up on the couch or the desk and fucking around. You're just on your P's and Q's. By the third, fourth year at radio, you're talking shit about everyone, and you're putting everyone's job at jeopardy because your lips are a little loose. When Frank was around Carson, he was young, he was hungry to prove himself. It was more about fitting in than worrying about himself. He had a lot to prove. He was still fighting just for respect in the league. Frank left after that second year. right? Because Josh leaves and then he ends up jumping back after the Super Bowl year. So Frank, the guy that he knew, is it fair to say might have been kind of a different guy? Maybe just Carson's true colors came out once he got money, once he just got comfortable is probably the wrong word, but didn't have to worry about like proving himself. He's just a different human. Like the guy Frank thought he was getting, maybe the young, hungry, young guy was different than the guy Frank got.
Yep. Also, I do think, having watched Carson a lot this year, 27-7 is, I think, is a little misleading to how good he was. I don't think he was quite as good as that number makes it seem. He was a bit of a roller coaster every time I watched him. Left-handed passes, two-handed passes from the grasp. Just he threw that pick six in his own end zone, right?
Which, remember, was the right move.
It was the right move. But you know what I'm saying? Like, do you agree that 27-7, while better than we thought it was and deserves to be respected on its own, is probably better than he looked when you watched him?
But we're talking about him 27-7. You could have a season where like this guy played like a top 10 quarterback. We're not saying that. But people, I'd say consistently, when his name's brought up, talk about him like he's a bottom 6 or 7 quarterback. And I think what Washington would tell you, listen, does he have his flaws? And do we got to work on this guy? And maybe me, Ron, and Jack will try to get him to be a guy's guy. But he is dramatically better than anything we could have got and definitely than what we had. And that's all. They're just looking for the 14th best quarterback, which may be what he is. But if you have a good team and you have the 14th best quarterback, ask Kyle Shanahan. You can win 10, 11 games. They're just trying to get to the playoffs.
Sure. But that guy, you better if you're not going to be a leader, if you're not going to be a positive influence in the locker room.
They went 7-10 with a guy we didn't even know who he was a year and a half ago.
But yeah, but they might like that guy. That guy might have friends in the locker room, right?
I think they do, yeah. But he's not as good.
No.
So there's
so
a balance.
I think there's a real chance they win 9 games and go to the playoffs, because 9 games, while it doesn't get the Colts to the playoffs, it might get football team to the playoffs. The NFC and the NFC East is very different than the AFC.
Well, do they have the second best quarterback in the division right now?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, Daniel's the worst. Obviously, Dak's the best, but Carson Wentz is a better quarterback than Jalen. Now, Jalen's a better guy. How about that game? That game's going to be, I think it's at Philly.
Well, there'd be both of them. What do you mean?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking the Colts. Oh, because the Commanders play the Colts, too. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh, the Commanders play the Colts, too?
So Carson Wentz plays the Colts and obviously the Eagles twice. You think he gets booed at Philly? He wasn't really. It's not like he was Ben Simmons to them, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they won a championship without him. It was more painful for him than it was for them. You know what I mean? Like, I think Philadelphia was more traumatizing for Carson Wentz than it was for the Eagles fans.
Was it you that told me a story about him and maybe a guy that is in charge, and they cross paths on the field, and he just never broke stride?
That he might have blown off Jeffrey Lurie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he did Jim Irsay too.
Maybe.